Hey guys, how you doing? This is Bear with Bear's Den Acrylic Art, back with another painting video. This time we are going to be doing something different. So in front of me I have two examples that I finished. This is a 12 by 12, or no, I'm sorry, a 14 by 14, and this is a 14 by 18 cradled wood gesso board that I have gold leafed and sealed. And you know, this one I have some TLP Grenache over it with some more gold leafing. This one got a glaze of Golden's blue manganese and Arteza pearl glacier blue with some watercolor work done over top. I'm trying to push myself out of my comfort zone a little bit, trying some new things. And while I was out in California, I saw something similar in one of the galleries in Sausalito that I was just really taken with. So in the 2 weeks that I've been back, I've been trying to reverse engineer what I saw, so I could kind of make my own. And I'm really happy with how these turned out. I'm still, learning the finer things, especially with the glazing. But I wanted to take you through the steps of, one, preparing the substrate, and then leafing and sealing, and then getting to the brushwork over top, just for something different. I think, this kind of background really opens itself up, for a lot of stencil work. Some of you are incredible with your brushwork that I've seen. So yeah, this is just something different. So I have another 14 by 18 gesso board. It's one of the Da Vinci boards. And I am going to get that set up, and we are going to start the process of leafing. So give me 1 second while I amass my supplies, and I will meet you right back here. Okay, so what I have is my Mona Lisa gilding adhesive. Okay, you could also use Mod Podge, which if you're in search of immediate gratification, put the Mod Podge on, then put your gold leaf on. With the gilding adhesive, you paint a layer on, and then you have to wait about 20 minutes for it to get to the right tackiness, okay? And the coat that we are going to put on needs to be even. Okay, so we definitely do not want, our adhesive pooling anywhere, okay? So we are just going to paint a layer on the surface of our ultra smooth gesso board, okay? And it needs to be ultra smooth, all right? Because since we are doing leafing over top of this, any texture, the smallest little bump on the surface is going to show through, which is why I prefer doing this on the wood instead of a canvas, because if you wanted to do this on a canvas, you most certainly could. You're just going to need about 1 million coats of gesso to get it to the right smoothness. Unless you like the texture, that is perfectly up to you. I like having such a smooth surface, so I'm going to fast forward this part because you don't need to watch me, paint on a layer, but that's all I'm going to do is we are going to paint on a layer. We're going to wait 20 minutes, and then we are going to start the leafing process. Tonight we're going with copper leaf just for something different. Okay, so hopefully that wasn't too boring for you to watch, even sped up. So I have an even coating over the entirety of the gesso board, and you know, the sides are taped. All right, this is a 2-inch depth, so the green frog tape that I have is just perfect for this. Okay, so you'll notice that I'm also showing the sides a little bit of love too, okay? Because when I put my leaf sheets on here, I want to be able to fold it over, okay? So the lip around the edge of the gesso board needs to get some adhesive too, and you want to be somewhat, you know, generous with it, okay? Because the top is, you know, coated with gesso, but the sides are more absorbent. The sides of the gesso panel, you know, not the cradle of the cradled wood panel, but just, you know, the sides of this top gesso board part are more absorbent. So you want to be generous with the adhesive on the edges, okay? But you'll see that, you know, sometimes the leafing just doesn't want to adhere. So there are always ways to touch it up. And I, you know, on both of the panels that I've done already, I have had to do some touch-ups on the leafing. So that is actually to be expected. So we are going to set the clock for 20 minutes, and we are going to come back and we are going to get to the leafing process. So see you back here in about 20 minutes. Okay, friends, we are back. We are tacky. We are ready to go. All right, so for this next step, you need some leafing material of your own choice. Tonight I'm doing copper, but you can do imitation gold leaf. Hey, if you can afford it, you could do real gold leaf. But why spend $5 a sheet when it can be 30 cents a sheet? You know, tonight I'm doing copper leaf. So all we need for this step is copper leaf and a sheet of wax paper. And the sheet of wax paper is going to help us transfer the metal leaf onto the gesso board, okay? Now, some packets of gold leaf or copper leaf, you know, they come pre-affixed to their own transfer sheet, so you just kind of peel the sheet, stick it down, peel it off, you know, Bob's your uncle, you're done. These are loose, and this is where the wax paper comes in handy, okay? Because I don't want to touch this at all, okay? If you've never worked with gold leaf or copper leaf or silver leaf, this stuff is thinner than thin, okay? This is thinner than my last excuse, kind of thin. So the wax paper lets us use, I guess, static to pick it up, okay? Now, you just want to make sure that you are, you know, you don't want to rub too hard because it could tear even underneath the wax paper, but you just want to make firm, constant pressure, okay? And then, see, this is not cooperating. So then we lift it up. And, you know, the wax paper is important because, you know, it's translucent, so, you know, you can kind of see through it or, you know, see around it. So I want to just kind of place this in the corner as straight as possible, And I want a little bit hanging over the edge because I'm going to fold it down, all right? And you have to commit to this. So once you put it down, there it goes, okay? Because this will tear so easily, all right? So I am just going to kind of drop it into place just like that. And before I pick up the wax paper, I gently but firmly kind of burnish, all right? We're just pushing out any air underneath, all right? And then just folding it over. And then doing the same on the other side. All right, so if we did this the right way, the paper should come up and the copper leaf should stay put. But we still do this slowly because sometimes, oh, look at that, perfect, okay? So it's not gonna look 100% smooth yet, okay? Because we are going to go back and we are going to burnish this again, all right? That is just our initial placement. So all we are going to do is move on to the next sheet. Now these are very easy to skip over, all right? So you just make sure you go to the next sheet. You get your wax paper down. All right, this is a rinse and repeat situation. All right. Now, even if your leaf looks torn, that is okay. All right, unless it is like torn in half or like absolutely mangled. All right, see the corner on this piece, all right, didn't make it, but that's okay because we are going to slightly overlap these sheets, all right? So again, this is where the translucency of the wax paper comes into play. Now, all right, see that one I really didn't do a good job of, but oh well. It'll still work. All right, so same thing. Just push out the air, push the sides. All right. And now this is the overlapping part. So if some of this comes up, that's okay. We don't care about that. It's only the part that is directly touching the gesso board. All right, so this is kind of free floating, okay? This is super, super thin, and if you're under a vent, if you are a heavy breather, this stuff will go airborne, okay? Much like the dry pigments do. All right, so now that I have done a couple, you know what? I don't like the way that this particular sheet looks. Yeah, this one looks pretty roughed up. So we are just going to skip him, and he'll be our spare parts if we need them. So I'll do this last one, and then I will speed through the remainder. So we're just pressing firmly. Of course, it helps if you don't have anything underneath like I do. And, you know, you do want to kind of keep these in, you know, as much of a straight line as you can. I really didn't do a great job with this second sheet here, but that is okay. And we are going to have a lot of waste on the end, but that's okay because we can use what is left over for little touch-ups, okay? Because sometimes you're going to see little, you know, little cracks, you know, in the leafing. Okay, now you see how this is coming up? That's okay because it's some overhang, but if you get nervous, you can just drop it right back down. Burnish, burnish, burnish. Nope, okay, see, it wants to come up, so come up it shall. And once we take our gilding brush and take all of this excess off, it'll look clean, all right? So don't worry that, you know, it's gonna look very kind of patchwork and piecemeal, but, you know, you'll see when we get to the end. So I'm gonna speed this up for you. So yeah. I'm going to speed this up and finish this. Now, because I have enough left over in this corner to do this, I am not going to pick up another sheet. I'm just going to use what I have. Well, oh, you know what? We're just going to do another sheet. Do you want to do it quick or do you want to do it right? And I want to make sure I do it right. So we pick up our last sheet. Okay. So now that we have everything kind of loosely covered, okay, what I want to do, all right, so we are going to use our wax paper. All right, we're just going to put it down again. It doesn't really matter where. I just kind of, work it in quadrants. And, we don't have to worry about the excess leaf sticking. But I do want to take, this is just a used paper towel that's dried. And, I am really pressing firm, okay? Just to make sure we burnish fully. So our end product, once we brush off all of the excess, we want to make sure that what we are left with is as smooth a surface as possible. Now, after we let this rest, all right, I usually give the adhesive a couple hours to kind of cure before, I brush everything off. But you'll see that once we get everything brushed off, the surface is going to be relatively, well, hopefully as smooth as possible. Okay. Now, when it does come, that's what I was going to say. When it does come to brushing all of the excess off, this is a pain because this gets messy. All right. And this stuff will fly everywhere. So if you have the ability to do this outside and you don't care that, your lawn or patio or wherever you so choose to do it is sparkly for a little while, it's easier to do it outside. However, I do not have that option. Hooray for apartment living. But I do, I've done this enough where I do manage to kind of keep it somewhat contained, and I make sure I vacuum the excess. So this is finished. Yes, it does look a bit like a hot mess with all of the excess, hanging on. But in a couple hours, in an hour, I'll let this settle for an hour. In an hour, I will come back and use my gilding brush to get the excess off. And we will talk about what comes next, which is sealing this. So I will see you in about an hour. All right, friends. Well, we're back and we are ready to get this excess leaf off of our board. Okay. So while you do this, okay, any like larger pieces that come off, you do kind of want to save, although I do have plenty on this paper, because after this is done, we are going to do a spot check of the lip of the board to see if the adhesive missed anything, because we might want to go back and touch that up. So this is a gilding brush, although any, soft bristle brush will do. You just don't want anything super duper hard because you do not want to gouge. You don't want to gouge the leafing. So all we are going to do, all right, is just slowly, just kind of methodically, all right, we're going to take off as much of the excess as we can with this brush, okay? And then I have a larger brush that I'm going to go in with afterwards and, you know, see if I can't finish the job. All right, so this is the messy part. You know, this stuff does get everywhere, but it is a necessary evil, all right? It's a necessary step in this process. So, just like last time, I'm going to speed you guys up while I get rid of the excess leaf. Okay, so I have the excess off. Now, one thing I did notice, and I figured it was going to happen, is you can probably see that I did not do a very good job of getting adhesive on the side that was closest to you. And I've got a little bit of a hole, you know, that you can see the underside. So we have two options. We can either, you know, just say, oh well, not a big deal, especially because we will be doing a glaze over this. Or we can go back in with our adhesive and we can just do little spot touch-ups, okay? And that is what I think I'm going to do, because the more I am brushing this to get the excess off, the more some little holes are opening up, and I want this completely covered. So all I am going to do is I am going to go back in with my brush and I am going to hit this spot, and hit that edge. So I'm going to be using a much smaller brush this time. Okay. So you just want to get it wet. Okay. And that's all there is to it. Now you do need to let this kind of set and do its thing. This isn't one of those like, all right, well, I slap some adhesive on it and while it's wet, I am just going to you know, throw on my leafing. It does not work that way. You do need to let this you know, get tacky. So I am going to just do this edge. And any other, because now that I see it on this side as well, I'm just going to go in and hit the edges with the adhesive. Now, you don't have to do this. You know, if you just want the, you know, the surface that you see to, you know, just be covered, that is perfectly fine too. This is just catering to my own obsessive compulsive nature. Okay. Yeah, so this is definitely a process. This isn't, you know, this isn't something that just takes a night, unfortunately. Believe me, I wish it did, because I'm very much a creature of instant gratification. But this is kind of a long game, because after this step, then we go in and we are going to seal it with some GAC 200, and you're going to put probably 3 coats of the GAC 300 on it. And then once the GAC 300 is on, then we have to let this whole thing rest for, a good 2 days. All right, this side is actually pretty good. As is this side. Okay. So, I am just going to let this do its thing. And, you know, I won't make you sit through. I'll come back once this is all touched up, and I'll explain what it is we are gonna do next with the 200. Okay, we are back, and I feel so much better having vacuumed up all or as much of the excess as I could. Yeah. So now we are left with a smooth, coppery surface. Okay. So what comes next? The GAC 200 is what comes next. What the GAC 200 is going to do, okay, this is a fast drying, and it's a fast drying. It's a fast drying product that, you know, it allows paint to adhere to non-porous surfaces, okay? That's one thing. The other thing it is going to do, it is going to seal this and prevent it from tarnishing, because gold leaf, even imitation or, you know, the real thing, and copper leaf will actually tarnish over time, okay? Imitation silver leaf is actually aluminum, so that doesn't tarnish, but I still seal it anyway, because I paint over it. Okay, so with the GAC 200, okay, it's basically the same thing as, you know, painting on the adhesive, okay? You just want an even coat, okay? Now, when I say quick drying, I mean quick drying, okay? This, you know, this corner that I'm starting in will already start to dry, you know, by the time I get to the end, okay? Well, actually, it's fairly humid, so maybe not. But it is fast drying. but since Drew Barrymore doesn't like to sit on the sidelines if she doesn't have to, she is going to come in and help, you know, dry things a little faster, okay? Now, normally I would wait a day or two before I seal this, but in the interest of time, you know, and this demonstration, I was thinking about, all right, what do I have on the docket that is going to be taking up workspace? So, you know, normally I would wait a day or two before doing this step. And, you know, what happens is as you are painting this on, you know, if the, you know, adhesive isn't set, you know, kind of like when you don't clean off the silicone oil, you know, it starts to have this response where the glazing liquid, or the the GAC 200, just kind of you know, spreads out, or it avoids the area. But if that does happen, it is not a big deal at all. All you have to do is keep going over it, and it will be fine, okay? But the way I learned this, you know, was to give it a day or two to rest and let everything cure and all of that good stuff. But like I said, in the interest of this demonstration, all right? And anything that, you know, looks splotchy, okay, because this dries clear. All right, so anything that looks splotchy, anything that looks like, you know, the lacing we get with, you know, Floetrol, you know, or mix or something like that, that can be worked over. So it is not the end of the world. It is not going to ruin the project. All right, so as you can see, I'm painting this on. You know, I'm not slopping it on, but I'm not spreading it too thin either. And I am just keeping my brush strokes in the same direction. And we are going to be putting 3 coats of this on. And we are going to be using Drew Barrymore to kind of expedite the drying process. But the very edge where I started is already clear. So that is how quickly this dries, all right? So I am going to hit this with a hairdryer. I'm going to put 2 more coats on it. The only thing I'm going to do is for the second coat, I'm going to go in the opposite direction, all right? And then for the third and final coat, I'm gonna go back to the original, all right? So that's the only thing that I'm doing differently. Okay, friends, that is done. So 3 coats, perfectly dry, and now this is prepped for the next step, okay? Now, one of the things you will notice after your 3 coats of the GAC 200 is that the finish of the copper leaf has matted just a little bit, okay? That is to be expected, all right? You know, just in case you were wondering. So the next step, my favorite part, is we glaze, all right? Now, I am going to move this out of the way so I can show you how we prepare the glaze, all right? Now, all the glaze is, all right, if you are unfamiliar with glazing, you are just putting a transparent hue over an existing color, all right? Glazing is very, very common in acrylic and oil. And it just, you know, like I said, it just puts a hue or a tint over an existing color or image, all right? Now, the color you glaze with, all right, that is entirely up to you. I like to go with colors that are somewhat complementary to the leafing, all right? The most important thing about whatever color you choose, and it doesn't matter if it is, you know, heavy body acrylic, or if it is, you know, tube, or if it is fluid, it must be transparent. That is the most important thing. So the glaze I'm going to be doing tonight is the golden Quinacridone Nickel Azel Gold, okay? And I know this is transparent because that little square, there's nothing in it, okay? If it's, you know, filled in halfway, it is semi-opaque, okay, or semi-transparent. Unless you're going to go real light on the glaze, I would stick with the transparent. And if it is a black square, that is opaque, and we do not want that. So there really isn't a scientific way to measure this. So I don't know where my palettes are, so I am just using a plastic lid, all right? So I am pouring about that much, all right? That is not a whole lot, but it doesn't need to be because the glaze that we paint on is so thin, all right? And you know what? I actually am going to do a little bit more just because that is a 14 by 18, all right? So, to the glazing liquid, and we're gonna put this off to the side. Don't let this go far because we're gonna need it in a second and you'll see why, all right? All we are going to do, we are literally going to be adding drops of that, okay? So that is 1, 2, 3, 5 drops, and that's probably a little too much, all right? But because this is so similar to the copper leaf, I don't think that'll be too big of an issue, all right? Now, you can make the glazing layer, you can make it as, you know, heavy a tint or as light a tint as you prefer. Now, you can see that mixing it in with the palette knife, like this glazing liquid really lightened up this paint, all right? And the Quinacridone Nickel Azo Gold, that is a saturated color, all right? But the glazing liquid looks milky, all right, when it is wet, but it dries clear, all right? And it is always, always, always easier to put another coat on as opposed to being stuck with, you know, something that's too much, all right? So we are going to get our board back up, all right? So you can glaze this any way you want. You can do multiple colors, okay? You can put it on with a brush. I've seen people put it on with a lint-free, you know, microfiber cloth with, you know, cut up t-shirts. You know, the sky's the limit, all right? For me, you know, I'm liking the, you know, the top half, I guess, to be glazed, since that's, you know, about where I want the image, okay? So before I do anything, all right, I am going to grab a little angle brush, and I am going to dip the brush into the straight glazing liquid, all right? And I am going to put it, a little more than a third of the way down, all right? Now, the reason I am doing this is because I am looking for, you know, kind of like an ombre, all right? Because if we just did the straight glazing liquid on the large brush that's tinted, you know, it's only going to go as far as, you know, what we load up onto the brush. But doing a couple brush widths, you know, of this, okay, you'll see how this is going to aid us in getting that ombre, okay? And it doesn't have to be like perfectly smoothed out. If you see brush strokes, that's perfectly fine, okay? Now, this glazing liquid is a lot more forgiving than the GAC 200, all right? This dries extremely slowly, okay? Extremely slowly. So keep that in mind, because, you know, we were able to kind of cut some corners before, but that is not the case moving forward. All right, not the case at all. All right, so all we are going to do we are going to take a large soft brush, all right, and all we are going to do is we are going to load up. All right, can you see that? We are going to load up the brush. Now, it's not dripping or anything like that, but there's a healthy amount on there. All right, so we are going to start at the top, and we are just going to paint on our glaze. Now, this, you might be thinking to yourself, all right, this doesn't look very nickel azo gold. Keep in mind though that the product that we are using appears cloudy and is only gonna, it's going to dry clear. Now I am stopping. I did not breach, that boundary because I want a higher saturation up at the top. All right. I'm going to hit this a couple times. And just keep going back and forth until you get it smooth. It is going to be dripping down your sides. That is okay because hopefully you taped your sides. All right, so now if I just kept going, all right, I'm just bringing this saturation rate down to here. I don't want that. So what I am going to do is I am going to, with paper towel, just take off the excess. Now clearly this is still wet. Clearly there is still pigment in here, all right? So all I'm going to do is I'm going to start bringing the color down into that boundary, all right? So at this point where I am painting this on now, all right, that has more glazing liquid than pigment, all right? And then we can take this. Now, like I said, there is no more cutting corners. We have to give this the time that it needs to dry and dry fully, because I may or may not have rushed this step the very first time I tried it, and I ended up having to go back over I ended up having to go back over the gold leaf. I did it with gold leaf. So I ended up having to go back over and re-leaf it. All right. So that's the good news, is that if this does prove to be, really problematic, you can either go back over it again with a second coat of glaze, or if it's just kind of shot to hell and you just want, a fresh start, then all you have to do is get your copper leaf again, go over it. You don't need to do anything to it. Just put the adhesive down again, wait the 20 minutes, and do this process again, all right? So depending on how this dries, I may or may not want to go back in and do a second coat of the glaze, all right? But I'm not gonna know that until it does dry. And it's gonna take, at a minimum, bare minimum, 24 hours, a full 24 hours, okay? Probably even longer, because I did put it on kind of thick, all right? And please take my word for it. Do not be tempted to just touch it, okay? Because if you think it might be wet, then it's still probably wet. And if you put a fingerprint in it, you might as well start over, all right? And then you're even going to have to sand that part because, believe it or not, a fingerprint is even going to show up underneath the leaf sheet, okay? So I'm going to leave this. I am at the stopping point. I have gone as far as I can go, but I will come back on in at least a day and we will see what this looks like, all right? If I'm happy with it, we'll move on to the next piece. If not, I'm just going to put on another coat, all right? So with that, I will see you back here in a day or so, and we will just continue on from there. All right, guys, as you can see, it has been a day and our glazing layer has dried. And you can probably tell that it is barely visible, the color change. All right, you can tell that something is, painted over it. And the hue is more yellow, all right, which is not something I wanted. I was trying to go for a more burnt orange look when it occurred to me that I actually do have some Golden's Quinacridone burnt orange, and it is also a transparent color. So we are going to try this again, and we are going to put the glaze on a little bit thicker, okay, because I really do want a more saturated look. I want more contrast between the top half and the bottom, okay? So, just like we did yesterday, we are going to pour in, about that much. Now, yesterday I put in 5 drops of the Quinacridone Nickel Azo Gold. So because I do want a more saturated color, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's see what that looks like. All right. And we just use the palette knife to start blending. Yeah, even though the color is very, very subtle, on the board now, you can see that the glazing liquid did dry clear. Okay, so this is why we want to use a transparent color, all right, because as we mix it in, the paint is going to be dispersed in the glazing liquid, and when that dries, all you're going to be left with is the color on the board. All right, so this looks thoroughly blended, okay? You don't want it streaky. So now, just like I did yesterday, I am going to paint on a little stripe. Oh, and I left my paintbrush in the kitchen because I cleaned it yesterday. So let me grab that. All right, here we go. Sorry, I'm a little scattered today. So we are going to do the exact same thing. We are going to paint a little glazing liquid boundary, and this is going to help us achieve a more ombre effect. Now, if you wanted a hard edge, you know, to your color, you don't need to do this, but I just find it lends itself well to kind of just blending the color, down. All right. So we are going to take our brush. Now this is still a little bit damp from yesterday, but that is all right. You definitely don't want anything like soaking wet. So just like yesterday, you can see I am loading this onto the brush, and we are going to paint it on. All right. Now, since we have one layer on here already, if you notice that as you are painting on your glaze, you feel it starting to kind of stick, you want to stop, okay? Because that means the bottom layer is not totally dry. And if you overwork this, you know, it's kind of like when you overwork varnish, how it can kind of drag, and you know, then it can get kind of cloudy and streaky. This is the same way, okay? All right, I think the burnt orange was the way to go. So I'm just painting up to our little border, just going back and forth to kind of blend it as best I can, trying to get as much of the burnt orange off the brush. All right, that's good. So, just like yesterday, we are taking the excess off. And then starting at our border, all right, we just kind of blend it down. So now that we have a second layer of our glaze, I'm curious to see what this is going to look like. And, you know, I can throw somehow like some saran wrap or something over this and plastic wrap to keep it from drying out. So if I want to do another layer of the burnt orange just to really drive that color home, I can, okay? Because, you know,
Golden products are expensive, so I do not want to waste any of the glazing liquid. I certainly do not want to waste, you know, any paint, even though it's 8 drops. You know, I paid good money for those 8 drops. So I will see you back here again when this is dry, and we will continue the process.
Okay, so we are back, and you can see that the glaze has dried completely. There's still some awesome texture, you know, underneath, and it does kind of have this ombre effect that it's not quite as harsh when you're not looking at it directly under a light. Now, what I am going to do next, I drew up an oriole, and I am basically going to place it about here, and I'm going to extend the branch down and up. And the best way to get this image onto this, because the GAC 200 that we used to seal it doesn't like pencil, is I can either draw it on with charcoal or pastel, or what's a great shortcut is transfer paper, which is probably what I'm going to do. So that you just put the transfer paper on, you put the drawing on top of the transfer paper, and then you know, take your pencil and do that, and, you know, transfers the image. And then I am going to go over it in titanium white and then with watercolor. So I am going to get to doing that, and I will show you what it looks like in the end. Okay, well, this is the finished product. I used some transfer paper and got my drawing onto the wood panel. I went over the outline in one of my Posca markers, well, acrylic paint markers, and then painted everything, even the branch, titanium white, and then went over it with watercolor. So hopefully you can see it's subtle, and, you know, my light isn't helping, but there is, you know, some shading, and, you know, it's not the greatest, you know, realistic looking oriole in the world, but I really like how this turned out. So thank you for tuning in. All right, guys. Well, once again, this is Bear with Bear's Den Acrylic Art, and thank you for watching this video. I know that it was something different than my usual acrylic pours, but you know, I'm trying to challenge myself and, you know, step outside of the box a little. So all of my work is up for purchase. You can find my portfolio on my Facebook or Instagram page, Bear's Den Acrylic Art, or you can email me directly at bear@bearsdenacrylicart.com. And if you are new, please consider hitting subscribe and like and notify, and, you know, share amongst your friends. Sharing is caring. So until next time, you guys have a good rest of your week. I'll see you soon. Bye.